All right, welcome to the latest episode of the Closer's Corner podcast. My name is Greg Simpson. I am your host today. I am actually riding solo in the house today. Susanna is busy doing a deal, actually, so she is out there working on that right now. But to remind you guys why we do this podcast is to let the general public understand what it actually takes for a real estate agent to close deals. We are the deal makers here at Outfast Realty and Investments, and my goal, and has been for a couple of years now, and that's why this podcast came about, to remind you guys, if you haven't listened to prior podcasts, is to let you guys understand what actually goes on behind the scenes that's not the Instagram and Facebook prettiness. While my agents may be pretty like my guest today, I've got Salem in the house, one of our top producers for the month of August. She's going to tell you guys what has gone on behind the scenes of her two deals that she closed in August, one on the buy side, one on the listing side. And we're just going to have a conversation about what you guys as agents have to do to get these deals to the closing table, because it's not as easy as they make it look on TV or as some of the agents do on Instagram. While you guys are very good at what you do, let's talk a little bit about it. So Salem, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Greg. I'm so happy to be here.
So yeah, let's talk a little bit about, you just celebrated 1 year here, so that's fantastic. As a full-time agent, mind you, which is awesome. So talk a little about why you got even into real estate as an agent / investor.
Yeah, so I started my real estate career back in 2018. I met a couple actually, who were flipping homes at the time, and my husband has a background in construction. I myself had a sales background at the time, and it was just, real estate investing is sexy, right? Mm-hmm. Everyone wants a part of it. HGTV, it's entertainment. I know we always have this conversation about HGTV versus reality.
Right.
They're very different. However, it's sexy. It is. It's something that everyone wants to be a part of, and it definitely looks easier than it is in reality. So I got my license back in 2018, and we began looking for our first flip, my husband and I.
Yep.
And I got my license solely to understand investing. I never really had a vision to serve clients, and, you get the bug.
You do.
Once you get your first deal done and you see how multiple people come together to create this incredible asset for buyers and liquid equity or liquid cash for sellers. I mean, it's an incredible process. So I kind of got the bug and began forming a strategy that I could leave my full-time job. And it's been a year now. Like we just mentioned, September 19th is a year that I left my full-time job to be a full-time agent.
Very cool. So you joined us. You came from another company. And what was it that kind of like piqued your interest about us? I mean, I know the answer to this, but tell the people that might be watching or listening why you decided to join us in the first place.
So I had a mentor before I joined Outfast, and I kind of just did what I was a new agent. And as a new agent, you're kind of in a place where there's a lot of things that you don't know, that you don't understand. You need training. The real estate education that you get, from the courses, from the classes that you take is kind of a joke, right? They give you enough to be dangerous, but not enough to be successful, right? So after getting a mentor, I thought that was going to bridge the gap. And unfortunately, as a young agent, you don't know that these mentors really don't know what they're doing, or maybe aren't ready for mentorship.
Maybe, yeah.
Or they don't go through a vetting process. They just self-appoint themselves as a mentor. And unfortunately, young agents and new agents are, the pitfall to that, or they bear the brunt of that. So when I spoke with Greg, Outfast had been on my radar for a while, and this mentor actually almost brought me to Outfast. That's when, they were starting to pitch that to me, and I was like, man, that sounds like a great brokerage. How do I sign up? And I had to make a decision when I was leaving my job to go with go with a company like Outfast that had tools for agents, had accountability meetings, had trainings, had an entire university, had so many tools and support for agents that I was lacking.
Yeah, I mean that's one of the things that we've prided ourselves on is having the support, whether that is via mentorship, whether that's via the training and the accountability. And so, like, that's part of the reason why we're getting ready to franchise and ready to blow the doors off of this, because people are itching for the model that we have put together. And I love that you didn't even mention the investment side of the business, because it's not, while we have investments in our company name, that is not just what we do here. We've actually worked pretty hard for the last couple of years to convey to the public that we aren't just some investment brokerage that only does fix and flips or rentals or even wholesaling, which we don't really do any of. It's just been a kind of an interesting dynamic. But so let's start talking a little bit about the deal. We can talk about the deals that you did this last month, obviously, but let's talk a little bit about what kind of got you to the point where you closed almost $1 million in sales last month, which is fantastic, especially during that month of August. August, September typically are some of the worst months in real estate, just because there's so many things going on with back to school, blah, 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 all that stuff. So it's pretty impressive that 3 of you last month closed almost $1 million or over $1 million in sales. So talk a little bit about the progression that got you to that point, and then we'll talk about those 2 deals.
Absolutely. So I will say that your pipeline is never what you see in August. My pipeline, I started working with those clients in January and in May.
Okay.
So it's not always, closing $1 million in almost $1 million in August is a great celebration, but it's not always. It's more work on the front end, and it's more work in the beginning of the year. So both of those clients actually were from sort of Sphere, but more from Instagram. So what I find is my social media will convert Sphere to clients. So I do use social media to get lead generation, to generate leads. However, I'm finding most of it is for conversion, not necessarily for bringing them to my profile, but it's what converts because of the content that I create.
Okay.
So both of those transactions were attributed to my social media, and one of them actually was a buyer that I've been working with since January.
Wow. So that's another topic. We could probably jump into it for a couple minutes here. I think a lot of brand new agents, especially since we've exploded in our growth of agents in the last 6 months or so, and it's just a misconception that agents have, and it's not their fault because they watch a lot of TV and it is going to be so easy, is that when you get started, obviously you have to learn a lot that you don't know, because again, the school doesn't teach you hardly anything about the practical side of real estate. But the thing that really gets me is that it's going to take any agent, unless you have a really good Sphere, it's going to take you 4 to 6 months to build that pipeline to actually even start closing deals. If you can close deals by 6 months, you're in really good shape. So I just want to say that's a huge factor that the general public doesn't understand either, whether you are an agent or you're not an agent. Typically an agent is working with a client for anywhere from 4 to 6 months before sometimes they're even showing houses to their clients or customers, whatever you want to call it. And so I just want to make sure that the public understands that agents aren't closing deals every month just because they talk to a person today and they're closing deals 30 days later. So, yeah. No,
and I've been building my pipeline. I mean, I honestly defy that and also fall into that, right? Mm-hmm. Because my pipeline, sometimes things were just easy. Things were easier. And my pipeline is only 3 months out. But sometimes it is that 4 to 6 months. Sometimes in that case, it was 8.5 months. And that was showing houses. Okay?
It's a long time to show houses.
It's a long time. It's a lot of houses. I'll tell you, it's probably 50 plus houses.
Okay.
But, it got me to a great August. Mm-hmm. And, sometimes there is a caveat to that. Sometimes it is a quick. I just picked up a listing today that will be live in October.
Okay.
So that could be a 60-day turnaround. Could be. But, there's no guarantee.
No, but that's the point is it takes time to build that pipeline, build the credibility. And that's what I've been trying to tell you guys for probably about 2 years now. Is to tell the story that we're going to start telling today, and is to tell the general public, again, whether you're an agent or you're an investor, and investors are sometimes the worst at understanding what agents do. So I love that hopefully investors are watching this podcast and listening to it as well, because we sometimes lose sight of the value that an agent brings to our deals, because we just are all about the numbers and the deals, and we don't get attached to the houses. But, we'll talk a little bit about that. So let's jump into the deal that you literally worked with this buyer or buyers, I'm not sure, for 8 months. So tell me, how'd you find them? And then what was their situation? And then, what actually took it to get them under contract and then to the closing table. So I'll start off with how you found them.
Yeah, so they were from my sphere. I used to work for Lululemon, and it was an acquaintance that I had at Lululemon who knew me and knew I was an agent from my social media. Like I said, a conversion from my social media, followed me, saw that I was doing some deals, said, hey, we're looking in January, reached out to me on Instagram and said, hey, I want to use you as the agent. Where do we start? It was a first-time home buyer.
Okay.
Their brother, the buyer's brother, is actually an agent.
I love that.
And they chose me. I'm going to get into this. I'm going to get on this tangent.
Go ahead.
But I promise that I'll circle it back. So Greg knows that I lost a $1.2 million deal because I drove a 2009 Toyota Corolla. It's facts. It's on my Instagram. You can find it. This client actually went with me because I drove a 2009 Toyota Corolla, because her brother went and bought a brand new Maserati the first deal he closed, a luxury car. So that, like, the level of trust with me was different just because of my car.
Wow. Unreal. Okay. Yeah, don't do that, brand new agents. Don't go buy Maseratis, because you never know when the next paycheck is coming. Good Lord.
Did not do that. Not good life advice.
No, definitely not. Have that pipeline built of actual deals under contract before you go do something stupid like that.
Then
no
you
offense
can
to
do
their
it.
brother.
But I thought that was really funny.
Yeah.
But they were attracted to me as an agent because I was a designer. I had some properties off market at that time that I was kind of showing, and I had gotten a contract on a property with another agent at Outfast that was pre-market. So they had automatic trust in me, and I built rapport through my Instagram, and that's where we started. From there, it took. We had multiple issues with the getting a contract itself. It was a really tough market back in the beginning. It still is, but it was even tougher. It was probably the most competitive back in the beginning of the year.
What was I don't know if the listing agent ever told you, but do you know, like, of the houses you guys offered on, how many other offers was like the max or the most that you ever got back from? Like, was there 20 offers that you were competing against, 30 offers? Do you remember what the highest one was?
I think 30 was the highest. And I mean, we were looking in the Heights. And if you know anything about Tampa, the Heights is just the most, it's the place to be right now in the market. And it's a very competitive market still to this day.
Okay. What was our price point on this one?
Okay, so we changed. At one point, we were looking upwards, like mid-4s, 4 to like mid-4s.
Okay.
And then after we had a couple like issues with financing, and then we went down to, we were with a different lender at the time. We were with one lender, and it was a lender partner that I had used before, and they were down to like low, like FHA, like low, like 320, max 350. Then
tough in the Heights for sure.
Tough in the Heights. Then we went with a lender that a lot of agents at Outfast have used, Rob.
Okay.
And he was able to get really creative and help them. And then we ended up getting a budget up to $400 again.
Wow. Okay.
That's really what changed the trend. That's really what changed it for us.
Awesome. That's interesting. So you got them up to 400. You had several, obviously many multiple offer situations. One that probably around 30, because I remember I've heard this story from a lot of you that have been working with buyers over the last 6 months to 8 months, that 20, 30 offers and some cash, no contingencies. And if they're conventional, that you're fighting against huge appraisal gaps and whatnot. So talk about the actual house that they found, that they were able to get it. How did that offer get accepted?
So, and my buyers will tell you this, it was me.
Modest.
I'm not even going to lie to you. I sweet talked that it was in an open house, and this house was perfect. It was a 2019 construction bungalow, super cute, had come back on the market, and I was like, I got to figure out, number one, why did it come back on the market? Number two, how do we get this? Because I knew it was perfect for them. So I roll up to the open house before my buyers got there, and I was just like, hey, what's going on? Like,
using that Southern charm.
Using my Southern charm to my advantage, which I do quite often. And I just built rapport with this agent. He had actually done a deal with Outfast before, had a really great experience.
Good.
So the name also Outfast spoke for itself because he had experience with other agents on my team that were great. And I was just really honest and upfront and said, I think that this is it. What do we have to do to get the deal done? And, we'll do whatever we can to get it done. We actually didn't come up crazy amount. We had no issues with appraisal. It was like once we got under contract, it was probably one of the easiest transactions I've had because it was just it was just so hard to even get to the point to the contract that once we got there, it was completely smooth.
That's good to hear because that's usually not the case.
Never happens.
So no real challenges during the actual under contract due diligence. No issue. Obviously, the 2019 house, so you're not going to have too many issues with that because that's where a lot of an agent comes into play is negotiate, especially on a buyer's side. Michelle, when she comes on, she'll tell you this. She is a beast at getting repair addendums done, even in this crazy market. So luckily for you, didn't have that major issue because it's only literally 2 years old and probably only lived in for a year and a half or so.
Exactly.
You know what the seller's reason for selling? Obviously, they only had it for a couple of years.
So this seller bought an Airstream and is going like off the grid.
Oh, Jackie, my wife. Listen, see, it happens. They have kids though.
No.
Yeah, so that's the hiccup. But okay, I digress.
Yeah, so I thought that was a cool, like it was a perfect, when you get, and my second deal that I'm going to talk about too is perfect once we got to the right buyer. I was on the listing side on that one. But it's a perfect example. These two deals I closed in August are a perfect example of a buyer wanting to buy a house and a seller wanting to sell a house and two agents working, of course, for their clients, but also working to just get the deal done. Because you have two people who want to buy a house. It's yes, there are big things that happen in transactions, but also you've got two people who really want to make a deal happen.
Bingo. That's exactly why I literally labeled us as the deal makers, because we have to do and fight for our clients all day, whether they're on the buy side or the seller side, but it is about facilitating the transaction, getting the deal to happen. And I would love it if more agents, whether they're at Outfast and they're brand new or even someone experienced, and if you're with another brokerage, that's totally fine too. Focus on the deal and doing what it takes to make the deal happen. For crying out loud, it is your job. It is not your job to do anything but other to facilitate the deal.
Yeah, unfortunately, a lot of agents have lost sight of that. I did a deal back in February that was a nightmare because I had someone who wasn't working for their client, and I knew this because I had unfortunately had contact with the seller, and the seller told me my agent is acting this way, and it was really unfortunate. The deal happened and went through, but it was a perfect example of an agent using their ego or using whatever it is, using something that they're trying to get for themselves, but not for their client, and it's really sad. And I think when you get two agents who really want to get the deal done, you can make some magic happen.
Yeah, you can. And that's the thing is like, as someone who does not have a license but has run a brokerage now for 5 years, I look at it from a different perspective than most people do. So when I hear stuff where the ego gets in the way, it is really, really frustrating for me. And I'm sure that happens here too. I'm not trying to pump us up as that we're the only brokerage that doesn't have an ego, because I know some of y'all do, and that's okay. But most of my agents that I'm at least aware of are willing to put it aside to make the deal happen. So pretty much because I've been preaching that. So let's talk, since that deal went through pretty smoothly, but again, took a long time, so you earned it over the time, right? So let's talk about the listing, because I know this was a challenge. Let's go through that one.
This was one of my most challenging listings to date. It turned out really great. You have a buyer who is super happy, and you have a seller who's super happy. So the end goal was worth all of the heartache and headache that happened through this deal, but it wasn't easy. So this client approached me. Like I said, this was also a conversion of my Instagram specifically, but it was an old connection from Lululemon, sort of, a friend of a friend.
Gotcha.
And converted through social media. I went to the listing presentation, I believe the 1st of May. And it was the seller's daughter who currently lived, and there was another tenant. It was a friend. They were college students. So there was an issue of they were not moving out till August 1st. So we were like, let's push the listing date back. That way that someone wouldn't have to buy a property with tenants in place. But we didn't want to push the market to the end of the summer, right?
Right.
So we had a plan. This was in the beginning of May. There were a couple handyman things that needed to be done to get the property ready for list. So I gave them a to-do list and, lined up everything. We were going to go live in the beginning of June. Went live in the beginning of June. This property was a very hard property to comp.
Okay.
It was on a very major road in Tampa. It's across the street. So if you know anything about Tampa real estate, you've got 2 high schools pretty much in the South Tampa area. You've got Robinson and you've got Plant for the most part. There are some others, but those are the biggest things. If you know about Plant High School District, it's a very highly desirable district, and anything that's in the Plant High School District will be comped differently than Robinson.
And it flies off the shelf.
Well, across the street of this street was Plant High School District. My property was across the street in Robinson. So it was a really, really tough property to comp, and I honestly told my sellers, I was like, this is what I think we're at, but I really don't know. And we also there was some things in the property that weren't known. The seller had never lived in the property. It was non-occupancy. So there was a couple things like the roof we didn't know the age of, but everything else had been pretty renovated in 2017. So fast forward to, I list it for $495. It's a 3-bed, 2-bath with a pool, but it was old. It was older. So we go under contract at way over because I didn't know comping this property was a shot in the dark. Mm-hmm. We went under contract for almost $540.
Whoa.
Multiple offer situation. Only 2 offers because the market was starting to cool in June.
Yep, a little bit.
So we, of course, took that offer. Unfortunately, we got through inspections. The roof needed to be redone. We were negotiating back and forth on the roof because we had an offer over asking. It was great. And the buyer's financing really does fall through. Ugh. Like, really does. Most of the time when you say that, it really doesn't. But this time it really did.
Yeah, I see that a lot. But yeah, okay. Damn. What was the reason for that? Do you remember?
So this buyer had a previous divorce that wasn't filed correctly. It was like a decree that you have to file.
Man.
And
they probably were heartbroken then.
They were, for the mortgage had gone into foreclosure, and so they had a foreclosure on their credit that they had no idea.
Interesting.
It really wasn't their fault.
Interesting. That sucks.
But it was a really shoddy situation. So I was left with this property that the market told me it was worth more than what I listed it for. We knew the roof was shot. At that point, we were like, let's do the roof. But I didn't want them to lose. In my mind, this was already the middle of June. We were going into a market that I was like, I'm not sure. We've got to get it back on the market. Mm-hmm. Even if the roof isn't done, we can say it's contingent upon the roof being completed and let them know ahead of time we had an inspection. We go back on the market. Within 48 hours, we get another contract. I put it back on the market for $539.
Okay.
Go under contract immediately. It was a VA. We were having the roof done and everything, and we had an appraisal contingency as well.
Okay.
That was willing to pay like $15,000 over appraised value.
Wow, it's rare on VA.
Which is rare on a VA. And these buyers, I think we were under contract for 4 days. The buyers, they had an inspection. They said that the pool needed to be resurfaced and all of these things, which were visible at the time. And I was like, even their agent called me and said, these buyers are crazy. I can't believe that they're doing this. They were asking for $10,000 off the price and getting a new roof and all these things. And I said, nope, sorry. Putting it back on the market for the 3rd time.
Oof.
So 3rd time goes back under contract. And actually, Actually, so it goes. So when we were under contract for the VA buyer, I got a call from another agent that said, if this goes through, I actually had 2 calls from 2 other agents that said, if this falls through, get us in. So I took it temporarily off market because what we were going to do, the roof was being done the next week. We're like, let's just wait for the roof because we want to give it the best shot. So I let one of the buyer's agents show the property when it was temporarily off the market, and we got a contract. So we didn't even really have to go full market. It was full ask, no questions asked.
Okay.
A smooth inspection. There was a couple things that came up, minor things.
Mm-hmm.
But they got a new roof, a fully remodeled property, a pool.
Wow.
And it was pretty smooth sailing after that.
Very cool. So, again, 3 times you had to go under contract on this house and negotiate and juggle all of this stuff on top of your buyers that you're working with in that month. And obviously on top of doing your social media and your prospecting and stuff like that. So, like, again, the point of this is that there are literally a dozen things that are going on behind the scenes that you guys as buyers or sellers really have no clue. And that's okay. Like, your agent's not there to complain and whine and bitch and moan to you about all the things they're doing to earn their money. I just want the public to understand why you get what you get. And I am really sick and tired of you guys having to cut commissions to, I mean, I know you guys aren't doing it for the most part because I've literally told you not to, but the market is trying to force agents to cut their commissions down to 2% or less, Zillow is listing houses for whatever percentage as well. And literally, I've had 2 agents now this past month tell me that they were representing the buyers going through with Zillow, and they will not get on the phone with you. It's all done via email. And so trying to get anything done in a timely fashion with inspection periods needing to be 5 to 7 days, high, escalation clauses, all of these different things, it is impossible to work with these iBuyers or iSellers now. And so it is just very important that you guys really do your due diligence on hiring an agent that really knows what they're doing and is willing to do the things they need to get done to make the deal happen. So Salem, thank you for coming in and sharing your story today. I thought it was phenomenal. Well done. Thank you for representing us so well. And guys, if you like this podcast and you got good information from Salem or myself, please give us a rating, review us, give us a 5-star if you will. If you're on YouTube, comment, ask any questions you'd like to have answered by myself or Salem or the rest of our team. And we will see you guys on the next episode of the Closers Corner podcast.
Back. Hands up.